Chapter number 15, which we started in yesterday's class, is environment chapter. Environment. This is the 15th chapter and it falls to the biology session. You all are clear about what an environment is, and it's being used as one of the commonly used word in daily life. Okay, so the first thing what we need to learn in the chapter is ecosystem. An ecosystem consists of two components, or in simple language we can say that an ecosystem is an interaction of living as well as non-living components in an environment. This is what we call it as an ecosystem. So you must be knowing what are the living components, and the scientific name for living components is biotic component, and for non-living we call it as abiotic environment or abiotic components. So what are the major biotic components of an ecosystem? Are animals, plants, etc. Animals, plants, etc. belong to the biotic components of an environment or the ecosystem. Whereas the abiotic components are soil, temperature, rainfall, etc., which are non-living but influences the components. Influences the environment. We call it as the non-living or the abiotic components of the ecosystem. So an ecosystem consists of biotic components, which are the living organism, and the abiotic components, which are the physical factors like temperature, rainfall, etc. So now we will discuss on what are the two types of ecosystem. There are basically two types of ecosystem. The first type of ecosystem is the natural ecosystem. Natural ecosystem is the ecosystem which exists naturally in the environment, and the one which are made by humans, we call it as the man-made ecosystem, or another name for man-made ecosystem is artificial ecosystem. So these are the two major categories of ecosystem. The first one example for natural ecosystem are desert, pond, lakes, etc., which are naturally occurring in the environment. We call it as the natural ecosystem. Whereas the one which is made by human, we call it as man-made or artificial ecosystem, which falls with the example garden, okay, crop field, then aquarium. All these are examples for man-made ecosystem. So in total, our environment consists of ecosystem, which consists again of living and non-living components. Living components are called biotic, and the non-living physical factors, we call it as the abiotic. And there are two types of ecosystem. The one is natural ecosystem and the other is our man-made or artificial ecosystem. So now we have to classify our organism under various categories. And we know that basically the organisms fall under the category producers, consumers, and producers, consumers, and decomposers. These are the major classification of organism. As you know, producers are those organisms which can fix the solar energy into chemical energy. And who does that? Normally, this is done by green plants. Don't simply write plants. It should be written as green plants and certain bacteria. These are the major producers of our environment. And the second category falls with the consumers. These consumers can be again classified as primary consumers, secondary consumers and all. Okay, so basically anybody who can produce their own food, we call it as producers, or another name for producers is autotrophs. Whereas all the organisms which directly or indirectly depend on autotrophs, we call it as consumers. Either it will be directly depending on autotrophs or indirectly they will be depending on the autotrophs. So the major classification of consumers fall as, if it is a plant eating, we call it as herbivores. If it is meat eating, we call it as carnivores. And if they are eating both plant and animals, we call it as omnivores. And there are certain organisms which live on the host and get benefited. They are called as parasites. So all these four fall under the category of consumers. And now we have decomposers with us. Decomposers are mostly they are naturally occurring, and the examples for decomposers are bacteria and fungi. These both, what they do is that they decompose. Decompose means they break down dead remains. Okay, they break down the dead remains and waste. The dead remains and waste. Okay, and wastes. Basically, what it is doing is complex organic substances. Okay, they are converting complex organic substances to simple inorganic substances. Simple inorganic substances. So this is what an decomposers do. And what are the two major naturally occurring decomposers are bacteria and fungi. And there is one board question like why we need to clean our aquarium regularly. Clean aquarium. Why do we need to clean the aquarium regularly? Because it lags. Because there is a lack of natural decomposers in it. There is a lack of natural decomposers. There are no natural decomposers to replenish the aquarium. So that's the reason why we are cleaning the aquarium in regular interval of time. Then the next part of the chapter starts with food chain. All of you know that a food chain is a chain of representing the animals or the organisms into different levels of who eats who. And the simplest food chain, what you can recollect, is the grass eaten by grasshopper. Grasshopper eaten by frog. Frog is eaten by snake. And snake in turn is eaten by the hawk. This is the, it's a sequence of who eats who. And this is what we call it as the food chain. And each level in the food chain, we call it as, each level we call it as the trophic level. Each level we call it as trophic level. So in detail about food chain and food web, we will be studying it in the next class. So far we are clear with an environment consists of ecosystem. Ecosystem has biotic and abiotic components. Biotic is the living component. Abiotic is the physical factors which affect. Normally, the organisms are classified as producers, consumers, and decomposers. Producers are autotrophs which do photosynthesis. and fix the solar energy into chemical energy with the help of sunlight and chlorophyll. And all the producers are green plants and certain bacteria. So there is a board question from that. Why always the tropic level, the first tropic level is always a producer? First tropic level is always a producer. This is a board question. Is always a producer. What is the reason for that? Because in every food chain, somebody should be there to make the food, and that can be done. Only producers can fix the solar energy. So that is why always we will see producer at the first tropic level. So this is the total content, and you should know about the consumers. They are herbivore, carnivore and omnivore, and decomposers example are bacteria and fungi. They are the natural decomposers which convert the complex organic substance to simple organic substances. So this is the total content of the chapter which we have taken yesterday in our environment.